I think it's pretty safe to say that the Justice League series was pretty great. Even though I was born after the series ended and grew up more on Justice League Unlimited, I still really enjoyed the episodes I did see. It was entertaining, well written, had great animation, for the most part, and what I remembered it most for, great villains. Having a good villain can improve a story immensely, because they can bring so much presence and make it more interesting. Some stories are even carried by their villains, regardless of if it's already good or not. Justice League was no stranger to this, and presented a wide cast of amazing villains. You had returning greats like Joker, Darkseid, and obviously Lex Luthor, but also Gorilla Grodd, the Justice Lords, the Thanagarians, and even Cthulhu himself. But do any of you remember Vandal Savage?
Who?
Vandal Savage is an immortal supervillain who has appeared several times throughout DC media, and I think Justice League is easily his best interpretation. In fact, I think he's the best villain on the show.
What?
I know that's a hot take, especially for a show with guys like Luthor and the Joker in it, but after rewatching most of the original Justice League, I think I have an argument that you may not agree with, but hopefully at least understand. So with all of that aside, let's get into it.
Say, you want to come over to my house?
Vandal Savage is a Nazi war criminal. He was...
My grandfather.
What?
Every good villain has their own style. All of the greats have a certain pizzazz, a specific feel. Megamind honestly puts it the best.
Yeah? What's the difference?
Presentation!
And in Justice League, Vandal Savage bleeds personality. First of all, whenever he appears, he brings this atmosphere of decadence and superiority, similar to Lex Luthor, which is a good thing, considering Luthor is one of the best written characters in that universe. He even retains this atmosphere thousands of years into the future, with an added touch of a little insanity, which makes sense for somebody left alone to himself for that long.
Hello.
This extravagance is kept up by the way Savage appears in his episodes. He's always running some kind of scheme or pulling strings over fighting the heroes directly, whether it be the Nazis, European monarchy, and even the automated penthouse he owns in the future. This also carries over into the way he speaks to people. He's got this calm, collected demeanor and speaks in a very laid-back tone, thanks to Phil Morris's acting, who does a very good job.
Some garden. I spent quite a lot of time rediscovering the principles of agriculture. Something to do.
Savage doesn't really let anything faze him. Even when he's out of the public eye, he stays at relative ease. He only really gets mad when things don't go his way, which doesn't happen very often because his plans are always fooled at the last minute. It typically takes a while for the heroes to stop him, which ties into...
What do you think you're doing?
Destroying the Justice League, building a railgun, assuming total dominion over the nations of the Earth.
All great villains are dangerous in some way, and Vandal Savage is a pretty dangerous dude. Which on its own isn't really much because every villain the Justice League faces in the show is dangerous to some extent. However, he exceeds most of these villains, and that's because of how much of a large-scale threat he poses to the League each time. To give you this sense of scale, let's look at some of the other villains on the show. While most villains were a pretty large threat, there was always one specific hero they would focus on over all the others most of the time, a nemesis, if you will. Felix Faust held a grudge against Wonder Woman, Morgan Le Fay was more concerned with Etrigan, and Joker and Luthor obviously prioritized Superman and Batman above everybody else. Now that I think of it, a lot of villains hate Superman the most, like, a lot. They must have played Injustice. Anyways, there are only really a few villains that don't really seem to hold any bias. Cthulhu and the Thanagarians, which I'll admit is a sloppy argument because both of them seem to focus on Hawkgirl as well, but less so than somebody like Joker does with Batman. Even Luthor eventually becomes more focused on the entire League towards the later episodes of Justice League Unlimited, but Vandal Savage differs from all of these people because he truly doesn't have a bias for any member in the League. He hates everybody. When there's a story arc with Savage, it's typically a world-ending plot very different from the others, examples being the episodes Maid of Honor and The Savage Time. In Maid of Honor, Vandal was about to gain control of an entire country, captured Wonder Woman, and hijacked a space station to hold the entire world hostage, which he would have gotten away with if it wasn't for Batman. Typical. In The Savage Time, Vandal had sent a computer back in time to his younger self in World War II, which gave him blueprints to build war-changing weapons, and he also told him the outcome of the war. This causes the future to change, turning the world into a modern-day fascist regime. So now the Justice League has to go back in time and fight the Germans wielding futuristic weaponry, and stop Savage from invading the United States. Now yes, they are able to stop him, but they only survive by the skin of their teeth. Some of them even get gravely injured in the war. probably because Batman wasn't there. As crazy as the Savage time was, though, his most dangerous weapon isn't even shown to us, just the aftermath. In the episode Hereafter, Savage had created some kind of gravity weapon, and the League wasn't able to stop him because Superman was out of commission. This weapon had accidentally destroyed all life on Earth, leaving Savage as the only human left, doomed to roam an apocalyptic wasteland. That is, until he and Superman fix everything with time travel, but still, the point is, he won. He's not like Luthor or Dr. Destiny, where they may have won in the moment, but they're eventually stopped. Savage actually conquered Earth and killed all of the heroes, even Aquaman.
Damn fool! You're more useless than Aquaman!
If that's not a threatening force, then I don't know what is.
I should never have done it.
Done what?
This. I destroyed the world.
Now, I mentioned that Savage and Superman fixed the apocalypse with time travel, but one might ask, why did they do that? Why was Superman working with a global terrorist warlord? Well, it's because Savage goes through a serious character arc in the apocalypse story. In this episode, Savage has spent 30,000 years reflecting on what he had done, and when Superman finds him, he's reasonably a bit insane, but also regrets what he did immensely. He decides to work with him to repair the time machine and send him back to the past with knowledge of how to stop him from creating the gravity weapon in the first place. During the whole episode, we get lines of dialogue that really convey the fact that Savage is a changed man.
It took me that long to figure out that my lust for power and control was meaningless.
I don't know what kind of con you're trying to run on me, but you're wasting your time.
I should never have done it.
If you compare him next to his past self from, say, the Savage time, there's a pretty noticeable difference. And when the duo are about to part ways, Savage gives his final words to Superman, telling him to save the world and restore peace. After he says this, Superman shakes his hand, a true sign of respect before returning to the past. And when the future is changed and the apocalypse begins to fade away, Savage thanks Superman one final time, calling him his friend.
Thank you, my friend.
Savage is one of the only characters in the show to pull a 180 character arc like this. He fully reflects on his life and makes a change, which is something that not even Luthor, the objective best villain in these shows, does, at least not to Savage's extent. And before you say that any psychopath would change their ways after that many years alone, remember, Savage is immortal and has been alive since the Stone Age, so for him, 30,000 years is like an afternoon. I think that just goes to show how it's never too late to change your ways and to always stay hopeful or something like that, because at the end of the day, that's what superheroes are about.
Do your worst, child. I'm immortal. I can't be killed.
Well, that's my argument. There is all of my reasoning as to why I think Vandal Savage is Justice League's best villain. Now, I know some people will disagree, because like I said, Lex Luthor is definitely the objective best villain on the show, and you could even make an argument for Cadmus if you want to count Justice League Unlimited. I just think Savage is the best, because he's got everything I think makes a villain great. All of this really just ties back to the beginning and how great of a show Justice League really was. They just don't make shows of this quality anymore besides Invincible or Hitmonkey if anybody watched that. Maybe I'll end up making videos on some of those shows one day, but for now, that's all I have for you. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you found it entertaining and informative. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more like it, and I'll see you nerds later.
Tell me why it ain't nothing but a holiday. Tell me why it ain't